Right. Right. Now, a couple of things. First of all, just to let everybody know that the third part of 1,000 Words podcast is going out for members only on Sunday evening at 7:00. I didn't mention that during the news break. And the other thing was what we meant by extra. We're live just for members, but we will make the recording of this available to everybody, so that everybody can see Patrick's report as well. So that's that. Just before we get started, Brian, a couple of comments on the in the chat box about where are various people.
Yeah.
Diane is working hard on the magazine, which we are intending to have out 3 months ago, but it hasn't happened yet. So basically, where we're at with it, just to bring everybody up to date, is that we're pretty much almost there for publication. It's going to be a little bit different than we had originally envisaged, quite a bit bigger than we had originally envisaged, and so that's why it's taken a little bit longer. Tim Norman, who you know from the Skripal presentation that we did back in November, is leading the design and typesetting and so on of that, and he's effectively leading that project at the moment. But Diane, of course, is responsible for doing all the editing and so on, getting the content ready for Tim to get into the magazine, and so that work is absolutely on the go at the moment. Mark is continuing to write and do interviews with us at the moment, though he's not on the news program at the moment. Sandy has decided to focus on her book, and so she, and as everybody knows, was on Sonia Bolton a few days ago talking about this. So that's the situation with them. Have you got anything to?
I just wanted to say also for Diane. Diane has been doing some local. Working on some local reports in the background, and I will mention that on Monday. And
of course the Fernethy report, which is an absolutely massive piece of work. So yeah. Yes.
But we just want to say it is something we smile about, because we do what we do. We put out a huge amount of information, and people forget how small the UK column team is. So this is an important thing to remember. We sometimes have to move people around in jobs. Sometimes people have a priority that we have to bend and allow them to do. And sometimes people decide that they're going to do more for their own particular projects, and they move on from UK column. It has always been like this, and much as we might like to say that everybody that's engaged with us over the last 20 years is still here with us, that's simply not practical. What we have to do is remember the good people that have worked with the UK column, appreciate their professional input, and wish them well in whatever new endeavour they've got. This is the life of doing what we do. We are not the BBC, even though I think some people now think that our output is on a par with the BBC.
Well, hopefully in terms of production value, but not in terms of editorial value. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, this is true. Yeah. So it's part of the fun, actually, isn't it, of being new media, that you work in a world of a very interesting world. People can be professional, they can be complete amateurs doing their very best, and everybody comes together and tries to produce a good product in order to get the lid off the horrors that are unfolding around us. But it is an interesting environment. A lot of people are rebels, yeah, that's probably what makes it good. So we don't get too upset. If people are choosing to do what they want to do, that's fine. We will continue delivering UK column.
Absolutely. Where do you want to start?
Where do I want to start? Well, I think I'm just going to make a little comment on Epstein, because yesterday we had an announcement that Donald Trump was walking back on on the dangers of climate change. And so this is basically Trump overturning 17 years of Americans being told that if they don't deal with the climate, they're all going to die. So this is going to get him a lot of support. But of course, there's been a huge amount of pushback. Not only within the US, but also the BBC getting its knickers in a really big twist, because how dare Trump challenge the global warming conspiracy. So I've been really interested to see Trump and global warming, climate change issues break surface, because I can't help thinking what amazing timing. On the back of a potential war with Iran, we've now got a huge political unrest in the US around what Trump's done. And is this more of what I described a few days ago as Joe Moore's famous phrase in the UK when she said that 9/11 was a good day to bury bad news? What do they all want to bury? Epstein. And I wasn't able to do it in the other press report that I had, but in front of me, I've got a sheet where I've got a list, so an A4 sheet with a list of emails from the Department of Justice release in the States. And first of all, I need to say that it is absolutely true that just because somebody is mentioned in the data that the DOJ has released, it doesn't mean to say they are guilty of anything. It is simply that their name has been mentioned. But of course, the way the data has been released is just as a alphanumeric code to identify the file, and there's no particular label. So some of the emails that I took out, I did label for myself, and I am going to read you, it's very crude and basic, but the sort of labels I put on some of the emails, and you can see why we must never allow the lid to come on Epstein. So the first one is to do with media. Condé Nast is an organization, but Tony Blair's name also comes into it. We've got an email that is to do with an alleged rape victim by Epstein. We've got bank accounts and books about bank transactions in the Epstein files. We've got a particular release talking about biotech and Epstein's Boris Nikolic. That includes Blair, and it also includes JP Morgan. We've got Leon Deborah and Black assets. We have got Associated newspaper reports. This is where Epstein was very keen to keep an eye on what was going on. We've got another rape victim report. We've got a victim asking if the FBI have found video evidence of her rape. So this is a lady saying she was raped within that Epstein circle, and she wants to know whether that rape was recorded at the time, which is pretty horrific. We've got legal documents, including from Neptune LLC. We've got another one talking about, or just mentioning, banks and Tony Blair. We've got all of the data to do with Israel. And we're going to be talking about Monday about some excellent research that somebody has done on that. A really interesting one is there was an email talking about a cellmate of Epstein. Now, from the way his time in prison developed, this must have, in my opinion, been in the early days when they did have somebody else in the cell with him prior to him supposedly committing suicide. But this particular email is talking about the cellmate describing an orgy. Blair's name is in that. Of course, this does not mean anything. It's just the name was there. There's also an email talking about suicide and a kill attempt on Epstein. And when you see this sort of release, you start to realize how murky the whole situation around not only the Epstein case, but the incarceration of Epstein was. It goes on to talk about, were the prisons treating Epstein properly? There was the emails talking about whether Ghislaine Maxwell was actually being given correct facilities so that she could see disclosed evidence against her. An awful lot about pizzas. an awful lot. And I find this very strange, because here were these immensely wealthy people quaffing bottles of very expensive wine, traveling by helicopter to islands, whatever it was, but email after email after email talking about pizzas, the quality of pizzas, who's going to get the pizzas, how the pizzas are going to be shared. And I would just like somebody to explain to me why these mega wealthy, powerful businessmen and politicians only appeared to eat pizza, because I haven't yet found emails talking about other food products in their firing line apart from beef jerky. There's another email about deals and a reference to Tony Blair. There's Weiner rape allegations. And there's a very strange email talking about rape punishment in Yemen. And the cryptic comment, if my memory serves me correct, on that email is, well, we hope that doesn't happen here. I wonder why somebody would say that. So I'm just reading from my own sheet. I have to be accurate on this because this release is very serious. But with Diane, just to mention a bit more about what Diane's been doing from her professional background as an archivist and librarian, she is also very puzzled by the fact that this massive amount of data has apparently been catalogued enough to redact sometimes very, very tiny bits of information. And at other times, it's delivered to the public in such an incoherent way, it's very difficult to trawl through it. I believe that what we're actually seeing is a very well orchestrated attempt to confuse the public, not only in UK, but also the States. And it's going to be beholden, I think, on every single person in the public to get into these emails and search. That's how the ultimate picture is going to be brought together.
Yeah.
But just a little bit of a summary from me, Mike.
Yeah. Basil, any thoughts?
Well, tip of the iceberg is the phrase that comes to mind. I mean, all sorts of things coming out. The threesome with the former British Prime Minister. Did you hear about that? Now, there's obviously speculation online as to who that might be. I don't know, and I certainly don't want to get into any trouble for suggesting who it might be. So we'll just have to leave that one there. But Ghislaine Maxwell was at Oxford at the same time as the Conservative Party elite that formed the Bullingdon Club. Let's just say that, no more than that. I mean, that's just a fact. We don't know who else she was involved with. Pizza, of course, is a code word apparently for small children. That's why it's referred to so much. Pizzagate, of course, a couple of years ago, John Podesta's emails, that whole thing almost blew up, didn't it? And then got dismissed as a conspiracy theory. It doesn't look quite such a conspiracy theory now. I mean, I hope and believe that in the coming weeks, together with the unredacted files that Rokana and Thomas Massey are accessing, witness statements, etc., that this really does cause an earthquake under the political establishment. There are memes doing the rounds, not everybody in the Epstein files can be prosecuted because, if they were, then it would completely destroy the establishment. Well, maybe that's what needs to happen. I mean, is anybody going to investigate the stories of bodies being buried on Trump's golf courses? Why are there not forensic teams crawling all over them now, looking for remains? So many unanswered questions. And in the United States in particular, it seems, power is like Teflon. If you're powerful enough, you can withstand any kind of accusation. The Attorney General, Pam Bondi, when talking to the congressional hearings this week as well, bizarrely started referring to the health of the Dow Jones Index as indicative of the success of the Trump presidency, and therefore all questions of child rape, murder, etc., are completely irrelevant. I mean, it's the most bizarro situation as well as the gravest I can remember. It is bigger than Watergate, and it should mean that the dominoes start to fall. Well, they've started to fall in this country, but not, it seems, yet in America. Although I've seen this week the Trump administration described as the Epstein administration, given the number of officials that appear in the documents.
So long as the dominoes that fall aren't the likes of heads of civil service and stuff like this, the dominoes that need to fall ending in criminal charges, not just people losing their jobs, or as Kana said, people losing their princely titles. This is not sufficient.
That's right. Yeah, of course, the Americans don't have anything like the same automatic deference to the royal family that we do. So maybe we'll see a grand jury indicting Prince Andrew. The king has apparently indicated that he'd be okay with Andrew giving evidence across the Atlantic if need be. He could yet end up in jail.
Yeah, so long as nobody starts asking the king questions about Jimmy Savile, as we mentioned on Wednesday's program, because of course it doesn't just end with Epstein. There's much more to come out on in related topics. Well,
Epstein was the front man. Apparently, this is the story. The child trafficking and abuse and all the rest of it long predates him and continues after his demise.
Indeed. Well, look, let's go back to Iran then, and let's look at the second clip that Patrick did. So that's video 6, so let's run that and have a look at it.
And what it also showed you is that under threat of attack or external pressure, the response of the people in this country is to galvanize. So if, let's say, the CIA, the Mossad, it's beyond debate that they were involved in fomenting and engineering the unrest that we saw in Tehran weeks ago. There's no doubt about that. In fact, that's been admitted by former heads of U.S. intelligence, Israeli officials, Israeli intelligence, and so forth. They've more or less admitted this. But what they haven't told you is the devastation that this caused in terms of not loss of life of protesters, loss of life of law enforcement. And we were able to see with our own eyes after visiting with the heads of the police forces only just yesterday morning in the actual evidence file and the video evidence, which is quite gruesome, of police officers that were sprayed with kerosene by these so-called peaceful protesters, the West like to characterize them, and then burned alive. I counted at least 8 in the exhibits that were shown. Some of this has been released into the media here, but others, the footage is too gruesome. What they have released is very accurate in terms of CCTV footage and other video footage, which has been widely disseminated by now, of these so-called protesters, which are really rioters, if not agent provocateurs, who were shooting from using the crowd as a human shield in order to shoot at police officers. People were knifed, they were beaten, they were set on fire and then beaten afterwards, or they were beaten and then set on fire. We're talking about police officers. I don't have to tell our viewers here if so-called protesters were to do that in a European country, in the UK, to fire and shoot and kill or set police officers and burn them alive in the United States. So we saw what happened in Minnesota. Just by being a bystander could get you killed in America. But somehow they expect that the Iranian law enforcement are just supposed to stand down and allow these agent provocateurs to burn down the city and kill who knows how many people. Official numbers from the government are approximately 3,170. And it was interesting, they said out of that total, they regard 2,400 of them as roughly as martyrs. And those would be law enforcement that were killed, innocent bystanders, people who were involved in any sort of nefarious activity. First responders were also counted in there. I mean, firemen were attacked, EMS workers were attacked, Police stations were attacked, set on fire. They tried to occupy one of the main police stations in one of the big districts here. So, that leaves 700 of the non-martyrs, as the government would call them. In other words, people that were, in their view, and according to the evidence that they presented, were up to no good and trying to destabilize the country in advance of an airstrike. So it's pretty clear what the program was. If this was indeed, and it seems to be, all evidence points that this was a coordinated color revolution, violent one, more like akin to the Maidan in the sense of the violence that was unleashed. So, all we can say is life got back to normal very quickly. The government shut down the Starlink units that were being used to bypass the internet outage. And it's interesting, the authorities found out when they cut the internet, a lot of the unrest and these cells that were organizing and moving around in order to attack law enforcement and look for weak spots in sort of the civil service and civil defense, that all died down very quickly once the internet was cut. And then Starlink was the backup plan by the West, and the Iranians were able to neutralize that. And this is a huge city. This would be like something like a cross between Madrid and Los Angeles, and it got back to normal fairly quickly. People came out in the hundreds of thousands, if not over 1 million, came out in support of the police officers, the hundreds that were killed by these Western and Israeli-backed agent provocateurs. And after that, I can tell you, you can walk freely through the city. There's no really restrictions on anything.
A really fascinating report, Mike, and I know that some of the material that Patrick was able to see, obviously, very disturbing, and it is so sad that clearly inside Iran, so many people have lost their lives, been injured or maimed as a result of this trouble, and the evidence does seem to suggest that there have been these provocateurs at work.
Yes, and as we said on the news last Wednesday, very similar MO to in Syria, what started the conflict within Syria, which was never a civil war. It was always an external provocation.
And shots from within crowds demonstrating. That was one of the key things that I remember in the reports in Syria, that there were protests, but there were people sniping from within large numbers of people, but basically peaceful protests until trained individuals were sniping. So it's very interesting to hear these reports.
I just want to address a couple of comments in the chat box. One from 6-7 saying Patrick's mother is Iranian. This is absolutely not the case. This is completely one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard in my life. Brian's met Patrick's mum. She's absolutely United States citizen, as white US citizen as they come. So that's and then another comment saying, a bit like Vanessa. Vanessa's dad was Sir Harold Bailey, the British diplomat. Her mum was as English as Basil and Brian. So, I mean, I don't know where this kind of stuff comes from, but it's just ridiculous.
And it's deeply unhelpful because, of course, new members to UK Column come into the forums and then they see this sort of information. So we just like to say to the members that do use our chat box, just be aware of the need to be really measured and accurate, because other people coming in can be easily put off, or certainly they can be confused by statements which are clearly incorrect. And I know sometimes some of these comments are made in a jokey way, but these are serious things we're talking about, and I don't think misplaced humour is needed.
Indeed. But Basil, what were your thoughts on what Patrick just presented?
Well, obviously, absolutely horrific, the idea of spraying somebody with kerosene and then setting them alight. One wonders whether those actions were carried out by disgruntled Iranians or perhaps foreign agents of one sort or another. And to the extent that there has been disgruntlement in Iran, Patrick mentioned protests by the merchant class before Christmas. To what extent are those the result of the economic sanctions imposed on Iran for the last several years? I meant to ask him, and let's do so at the next opportunity, if we get one, whether or not one notices a shortage of food or essential imported goods or what they do. I know that there's still trade with China and Russia. And frankly, if you trade with China and Russia, then do you need anything made in the West? Probably not.
Probably not, indeed. I was interested, by the way, just before we show the third clip, I was interested that Patrick, when he was live with us, was talking about hypersonic weapons.
Yeah.
And so I'm not clear whether those are, I mean, he was talking about homegrown defense industry. I'm not clear whether those are actually homegrown or whether they are Russian, but nonetheless, the fact they have them must be giving people pause.
I'm sure they have them, Mike. Where have they come from? I think absolutely with exchange of technology with the Russians. But I mean, if we come back to European military capability and NATO, this is where we are in such a. If we just talk in normal, how do I want to describe? We stay on the normal road as if everything was okay. We've got a shambles in defence in the West because the West has tried to create this European military base under and within NATO, and this has confused the whole setup. And of course, the other thing that's been happening is that we've allowed the military-industrial complex to absolutely rip off the public purse in the States and UK and Europe in providing poor weapons, ever poorer weapons systems at ever inflated prices, to the extent that we haven't got any capability. And the other thing that's happened, instead of us as a nation state putting our best minds and scientists on the development of new weapons, I'm not suggesting we want this. I'm just playing the sort of straight game on this. That hasn't happened. We've been trying to get teams of Italians and Germans and French and Brits working together to produce weapons systems, and you always end up with a really crass compromise. Whereas if you look at what Russia has done, it's focused internally on its own expertise and markets to produce quality weapons systems, which now outstrip those being produced in the United States and the West. It's obvious that the drive to break down capability and pride in the nation state is ultimately destroying defence industry in the West, along with many other things in society. But do they have, it's a long-winded answer, Mike, but do they have them? Yes. And that's because the Iranians have concentrated on their own technological, scientific capability, and they've worked with the Russians.
Let's look at the third clip.
And, the other thing that people need to realize is that aside from that issue, this idea that women are forced to cover their heads and wear veils in Iran, it's not true. In fact, at the major demonstration, bear in mind, it had big religious overtones. There were a lot of unveiled women, including an international journalist that I know, who was also reporting. She wasn't wearing a headscarf. And so it's not unusual. In fact, you go out into the markets at night, I would say at least half. If I run a counter, maybe thousands of women, at least half will be uncovered. So, I mean, the propaganda in the West is something extraordinary. So there's a lot of stereotypes and misconceptions that somehow are fueling this drive. It's the only way to describe it, to demonize this country, to soften it up, to delegitimize its leadership, soften it up for a major military action. I think it's pretty clear that's what's going on. So to manufacture that consent, they need people in the West to hate the country to hate its leadership, to say the supreme leader, if you will, the Ayatollah al-Khamenei, that somehow he's illegitimate, and this is a Islamo-fascist dictatorship. You hear this argument from a lot, hyperbolic arguments from a lot of the people, let's say, who back the Pahlavi royal family, who they think they can parachute in and somehow that's going to be seen as legitimate. I can tell you, you'd be hard-pressed to find even a handful of people in the city of 12 million that would support the reinstallation of a U.S.-backed monarch, or any monarch for that matter. The other thing about this society, which is interesting, which I've learned, is I knew this previously, but there's a huge political discourse in this country, and opposition voices are completely permissible. There's a massive variety, if you will, a lot of diversity in terms of the conversation. So it is not a narrow band of political discourse here. It's massive. It's only that the structure is different here in terms of how their parliamentary system is constructed, and the fact that they do have a leader at the top, which also represents the spiritual life, if you will, of the country, in addition to the political. And of course, the military component is important, especially if you're being attacked by countries in your region or by the United States. So, but what's interesting is this system provides a lot of social and political cohesion here, and it makes you wonder, maybe that's the reason why the West are so hell-bent on regime change in a country like Iran. So that's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of other interesting aspects of this that we could share with you, but suffice to say, and I really believe this now, having witnessed also the difference in media coverage, or the lack of media coverage in the West of their national day of solidarity, their Independence Day, is that these narratives are so important. The forces that want to drive our governments and get the people to manufacture the consent for these wars overseas, they need these narratives in order to justify the action. They need the majority of the public, to believe and to hate on, to demonize, to delegitimize target nations and their governments or their leadership. Without that, our governments that are involved in these sort of undeclared wars of aggression, they really can't act. They can't act with the level of impunity. They certainly can't get the public consent to do that. So, if the BBC were to run a headline, a story, or the CNN of 2 million people take to the streets in Tehran in support of the leader and the government, and you see some of the banners at these protests, it's unbelievable. That would really undermine the war propaganda effort, and of course, it would almost be a case of envy, because you have to ask yourself, how many governments in the West can the leadership snap their finger and get 2 million people? And just in the capital, if you count all the other cities during the National Day, there's probably more like over 20 million that took to the streets. I think the estimate that I saw, official estimate, was 26 million. That's all of the cities and municipalities around the country. I mean, for a country of 90 million, that's more than 1 out of 4 people were out on the street. You don't see that level of response to the call for a national emergency or unity. You don't see that in any Western country, or any country full stop in the world. And this, again, one of the unusual, unique aspects of life here. And again, this is why I had to come and sort of understand this for myself.
We've got another segment to come of Patrick's report, which is we do want to play out for people. So we've just got a few seconds really to comment on this with the time allotted for extra. But Patrick raising some really interesting points here. I know that there's a lot of concern from the Iranian population in UK about what's happening. Deep concern. Clearly, people have been hurt in Iran, but has this just happened because of Iranian people making their own decisions, or have we got a hidden hand at work? And clearly, it appears that there's a hidden hand helping to stir up the violence. Basil, quick comment from you, please.
Yeah, I mean, what I thought was interesting was he said there's a wide variety of political opinions on offer in Iran, whereas in the West we're presented with the idea that the mullahs rule in an autocratic way and simply crush any dissent, that there is no national conversation. And that stands in stark contrast to increasingly what's happening in the West, where the acceptable opinion corridor is being increasingly narrowed. So, who are we to judge them, let alone start raining bombs on their heads? I mean, Iran hasn't attacked anybody. It was attacked by Iraq at the behest of the United States, back in the 20th century. But it hasn't attacked anybody. It hasn't got any nuclear weapons. And if the Iranian people are overwhelmingly in support of the existing political arrangements, as Patrick claims, then that should be the end of the matter. The British people don't have any beef with the Iranian people. Why on earth should we? Thanks to people like Patrick, fortunately, they are too few and far between. We get some idea of what other countries are like, which is, as he said, ordinary people going about their lives, trying to make a living, trying to put food on the table for their families, and hopefully have a good time at the weekends occasionally. Yet, if you believe mainstream media, they're all a bunch of raving lunatics over there, desperate to start wars or other such nonsense.
Yeah.
Let's watch the final part of this.
And also be able to inspect the damage sites from the unprovoked Israeli attack on Iran last June, and of course the unprovoked U.S. attack, Operation Midnight Hammer, as it's called, and to inspect some of the damage of that. We might talk more about that in subsequent reports. But and of course I got attacked by a lot of people on my social media feeds for basically sharing what I've observed. Certainly they don't like it, and it's so funny, all the people who are supposedly champions of free speech in the West and who opposed COVID lockdowns, they don't support free speech when it comes to geopolitics. Even when you have a Westerner like myself going and making the effort to get here against all sort of travel warnings and all sorts of obstacles in order to just try to convey some reality of what's actually happened. And and it's not that I'm surprised, because I've been studying and following color revolutions and Western destabilization and Israeli destabilization efforts against target countries for many years, for the better part of, at least in this area, quite intensely for 15 years in multiple countries. So you get to sort of observe the patterns, and you see the clues and the indications that, yes, that's indeed what you're looking at. And of course, that's the same thing here. It's just here, the difference in reality, the scale of the difference of what is the political reality in this country and the facts on the ground are so vastly, vastly different than the very narrow characterization that you get right across our Western mainstream media. That includes US media, British media, European media. It's actually shameful when you look at it and trying to say, how do these people call themselves journalists? And I even saw some of the mainstream reporting here. It's diabolical. They did let a few journalists in much to their chagrin after the fact, but the reporting has been absolutely horrendous for the few mainstream Western broadcast journalists that did come. I think their work speaks for itself, and we just wanted to share what we've seen here. And again, the people here are quite incredible, totally diverse ethnically and culturally as well. It's a vast country there's a huge plurality of thought, opinion, political, and ethnic representation here, but in one way or another, all united under an Iranian national identity, which is pretty incredible. So anyway, we'll hopefully share more thoughts and observations, maybe some more insights with you in the coming days and weeks. I'm Patrick Henningsen, reporting from Tehran in the Islamic Republic of Iran for the UK Column News.
Yeah.
Basil?
Well, I mean, what a typically calm and measured report from Patrick there. As he said, he recognizes the patterns from Syria, other parts of the Middle East, the efforts at destabilization. And, it's to be hoped that Netanyahu's latest warmongering foray to Washington ends in failure, at which it's beginning to look like it is going to. Of course, on the question of nuclear weapons, people ask themselves, well, look, North Korea has nuclear weapons and nobody has attacked them. Perhaps nuclear weapons are necessary in order to prevent an attack by the Anglo-Zionist empire. So let's hope common sense prevails and we get some peace and stability.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, look, we are absolutely out of time. Brian, we're about to get cut off in about 30 seconds time, so we should finish.
We should. So, Basil, a huge thank you to you. It's been great to have the news we've had today, and I'm really, really pleased and excited by the fact that UK Column is now demonstrating we do have the ability to start reporting from in country, and this makes a huge change. And if we can do more in the coming year, this will be excellent. And one of the things that's going to help us do that and expand and grow is the support from our members. So everybody who's paying a membership or donating or buying from the shop, what we're doing is because of you. So thank you very much. Yeah.
Got to leave it there. Thanks, Basil. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, everybody that's watched. Have a great weekend. See you Monday. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.